Good. So my name is Frederic Chanay. Can you hear me, or do I need a... No. I take this? Good. That's much better. So my name is Frederic Chanay. I'm the co-founder and chief product officer of OMsignal. We do biosensing clothing. I'm actually wearing one of my shirts right now. I'm not going to street, don't worry. But if you want to see a demo after, you can come and see me. So my shirt, it captures in real time my heart rate, my breathing curves, and my physical activity, sends it live via Bluetooth to the phone. And then obviously I run various algos, and it's sent to a cloud-based platform as well. We like to say that we're a platform, and I'm going to actually present a bit the vision of why we're doing what we're doing. And it's not a pitch, it's that because of that, it actually forced us to do certain things that some hardware startups might not do logically as a first step. And we actually got lots of learning from that, so I thought it would be interesting to share them with you. So, good. So we strongly believe that apparel is the next generation of wearables. And I think that when we started 3 years ago, everybody was literally laughing at us when we're saying, hey, listen, we're a startup and we're doing clothing. Thankfully, some investors were crazy enough to actually believe in us. And we got going. The reason we believe that, and I think it's becoming accepted today, so it's not a surprise to many of you who follow really the wearable market, to see that wearable is actually coming to age and actually starting to penetrate other form factors than a wrist-based bracelet. But we actually believe this because, well, every day we wake up and we wear clothes. So clearly, the clothes I'm wearing right now is not something that most of us will wear every day. But this is, patient zero. This is like Apple's one in 1975. If you follow the curve, you can see easily that a few years from now, all the clothes that you're wearing today will be connected in some form of fashion, and for different use case. But it's not unthinkable, right? It might have been a few years ago, but not anymore. And we love clothes for a few reasons. One, everybody wears clothes, at least, I hope so. The second thing is that you can be on the place of the body where the signal is happening at its deepest level. So we started with shirt because we capture breathing and heart rate, or ECG actually. And we love breathing, and we obviously love heart rate for various reasons. They deep core biosignal. They tell a lot about what you're going through and who you are and what you're doing. And so you had to be on the chest. And we thought that, shirt is a natural way to be on the chest. You could apply that to other actually signal as well. We also like them because at scale, they're incredibly cheap, right? So that's actually another thing that's very useful. Right now, wearable are getting to the cups of mass adoption, but they're still expensive device, right? $150, $200. And that's actually too expensive for mass adoption. Most people, in fact, a lot of people with needs wearables or biosensing wearable in their life cannot afford that. Whereas with clothes, with, the manufacturing system, ecosystem that's behind it, and the distribution system, they can reach everybody. And also, the fashion element. So, in our world, which is the tech world, right, where we kind of all geeks, and we actually buy a Fitbit or Jawbone, which I really like, and show it to people and say, hey, listen, look, I'm a geek, I've got this. But it doesn't please necessarily everybody, right? I mean, we're like 100 people here, we're all dressed differently, right? So why would that apply to wearables? Why, we don't all want to have the same wearable. It's not necessarily the best way to express ourselves and our personality. In fact, there's a whole industry, the fashion industry, that's been around differences, right? So we wanted to accommodate those differences. Ultimately, we see that biosensing clothing will permeate our life and will enable all kind of user case. If you want, you can go on our website and see that. Clearly, we started with sport. In fact, we actually started originally 3 years ago with a more focus on lifestyle. And then we started giving the shirts to beta testers, and they kept using it for sports. And then we told them, no, but really, it's a lifestyle. We have algos for lifestyle. And they started using it for sport. I mean, some people still use it for lifestyle. But it seems that, with the early adopter community that we talk to and listens to us and wants to talk to us, sport was actually a big need. And it's obviously a very accepted user case. You buy sport clothes and, you actually change at the gym, etc. But our vision is clearly to actually permit all these, market there. So we're not stopping where we are right now. The thing that's really interesting about biosensing clothing or clothing in general, if you follow the hardware evolution, is that the textile industry is going through a tremendous revolution right now. I mean, and you cannot see when you actually start buying, high-end clothing, like especially sport clothing. You see clothing that warms you up, keeps you cool, etc. Brands are starting to differentiate on fibers, on other use cases than just actually putting clothes on you. And that revolution is also happening at the fiber level. So it's not going to happen tomorrow, but in a few years from now, you'll have intelligent fibers. And the smarts that we have in electronics are actually embedded into our clothes today will actually be in the fiber itself and will be manufactured within as part of the shirt itself. And that's going to be very revolutionizing. That's when the costs are really going to crash down and be actually just incremental versus what we see today. So we like riding that wave. And right now, we're at the end of wave 1 and the beginning of wave 2. And wave 3 is a few years ahead. And I can talk more about it at the end if you're interested. But it's very, very exciting what's happening. So, smart clothing for everyone with obviously connected service to actually make sense of the data that you connect and to engage you into better behavior or better performance is a vision that we're there to for ultimately the crowdsourcing of health and wellness. So that was my pitch. Now, we really started like this. I know that people say, you're not a platform until you're a platform or until somebody says you're a platform. That's absolutely true. But when Stéphane Marceau and Stéphane is my co-founder, we started this business. We had this vision that we actually wanted to enable smart clothing for everybody. And we wanted, because we truly believe that if we actually give you an insight on you inside, what makes you tick, how your body reacts, right, you could actually make better decisions and live better lives. And we knew that if we wanted to do it as fast as possible and reach as much people as possible, we had to do it with the help, the scope, the vision of the clothing industry. So we decided we're going to be a platform for the smart clothing industry. To do this, we do 4 things, right? We do e-textile, and I'll talk more about why it's important to actually learn about textile when you do smart clothing. We do software, obviously, platforms, algorithm, and hardware. So the system works like this. You have a smart clothes with sensors embedded inside. You have a small bot that right now is plugged in on the side that's actually capture the raw signal, process them, send them via Bluetooth to the phone. On the phone, you have a driver and the SDK, sends the data to the cloud, sends the data to the application, and then you have algos that actually interpret the signals and actually make sense out of them. Why it's hard? For many years, we were just few people. We had 4 teams, right? And so that's 4 different skill sets, 4 different cultures. I have master of, textile engineering. I have PhD in neuroscience. I have, your traditional software developers. And then you have a hardware engineers, very hard to mesh together. It also means you have 4 times less people to work on problems because, the funding is still a constant, right? It's not because you're doing all 4 things, you're getting 4 times the money, right? So that's been hard. Especially the culture part, actually, having all these people work together, that was very interesting. And now it's actually meshing extremely well. And I'll explain why, because we started being able to solve problems by working together instead of in silos. So our first learning was that we had to do the full stack. In fact, when we started, we didn't have a lot of money, so we actually had a supply agreement with a company to actually do a hardware, and that wasn't a good idea. And the main reason why it wasn't a good idea is that you don't manage the value chain, right? And so, for example, you buy the hardware from somebody else, or you buy the shirt from somebody else, and then there's an element of the shirt that doesn't work. Well, the shirt connects with the hardware, right? If the connector is not to your liking, or if you actually create noise, like when you move, so we actually run the signal, well, you got to change the hardware and the shirt. If you don't control both, you're screwed, right? It's the same thing, right? So the data is processed in the hardware, and then it sends to the phone. If you realize that the way the data is processed, or the way the data is actually, saved and stored and sent to the phone, is not agreeable to develop the best algorithm, well, you're screwed because you don't control the hardware, you don't do the firmware. But if you control the firmware but you don't control the driver on the app, it's the same thing. So it's been very painful, but we decided to do all of it. And we learned a lot of problems together like this. So now when we have a problem on signal quality or any other kind of problems, what we do is that we look at the problem overall. So the construction of the shirt and the way you actually manufacture the shirt affects, obviously, the signal capture. The processing on the hardware actually affects the kind of usable signal you can have. The way you send the data to the phone also affects the way you can run algos on it. And the way you run algos on it affects the kind of experience that you can actually give to users. So it's been painful. I know it's not recommended. I envy the people we didn't have to go through this. We tried not to go through this, and we decided it wasn't working for us. And we surrounded ourselves with hardware talent, and we decided to do our own hardware. All right? And I know it's not necessarily going to be popular, but there's a lot of competitors that are coming in the space. And the funny thing is that they don't do the textile. I don't understand why they don't do the textile, because if you give the specs to a manufacturer and that does this, you're at the mercy of what these guys have as technology. And I'll talk about the technology in smart textile. They're new, they're not incredibly developed, very few people do everything. So if you work with someone, you develop your whole system based on that. And then if there's a new technology that's coming up, and that manufacturer doesn't do it, you're kind of screwed, right? Like, because you're not ahead. So you can solve problems at the manufacturing level or at the textile level because you don't actually do it. So again, not a judgment on others, but that's what we learn. And so if, in case you want to do biosensing clothing, hire some textile engineer. 2, sorry, I'm going to get some water because I talk a lot. Is that too fast? My accent is too hard? I thought with Matt you'd be used by it. So that's the cool stuff. That's the geek stuff. So biosensing clothing as a concept has been around for 20 years, mostly in the university and in the research labs. You can see example of shirt as far as the mid-90s, if not earlier. But the technologies, the textile technology that actually enable the commercial development of those shirts have really made progress in the last few years. And it's been very interesting. So you hear a lot about it. You see in the news, DuPont came up with this, that company did that. It's super exciting. In 5 years, it's going to be fantastic. Right now, it is mostly, first generation technology. And it works, but it's really embedded deep into the textile ecosystem. That means that textile manufacturers don't really know how to use it. And that means that normally people do this in steps. So you cut the shot somewhere, you send it somewhere else, you apply your technology over there, and then you can bring it back. So it's mostly a bit what's happening. And that's expensive, and obviously it's not incredibly scalable. The other thing is that a lot of the other experimentation right now have not been, they work in concept, but in the real life of both manufacturing and usage, it doesn't work a lot yet. So we were very excited at the beginning when we started OMsignal. That was exactly 3 years ago on a day. And then we quickly realized that, wow, there's a lot of things out there that's like, it's just PR right now. It's like, cannot be done in this process. It cannot be done at that cost. And I'll come back to cost a lot again, and I'll explain why in a minute. So we actually, that's one of the reasons we decided to textile. We say, well, if this problem have not been resolved yet, we have to resolve it ourselves. So we surrounded ourselves with textile. We work with, some of the greatest, smart textile experts in the world, Joanna Bersowska and Yin Gao. Check them out on our website. Their profiles are amazing. They have, 20 years experience each in developing, products in that space. And And we started actually solving problems one by one, which led to, a construction that's more maybe complex than necessary, but at least, it works, it's up there, and it's cheap, or at least relatively. But now the model is, the technology are actually evolving, manufacturers are getting into it, so I can see that in a few years from now, it's going to be extremely simple to actually develop some biosensing clothing, maybe not the whole system, but that part. And it's very exciting, but that is something we really had to go deep. We had people at the manufacturing, we worked on patterns with them. I had to learn about knitting process and a bunch of other stuff I never thought I'd learn, So it's something that you need to do. 2 minutes? Whoa, I'm going to go super fast then. Sorry about that. I have way more learning than I thought.
You can do a bit more, we'll just have less time for...
No, yeah, that's okay. So creating consumer grade, super important. So again, we want to be a platform. We didn't want to be a product that was exclusive just for, a specific elite, right? And obviously our first product is our first product, so it's an MVP and it's not necessarily, like a mass product for sure. But we started the products with thinking about, it's got to be washable. That sounds stupid, but it has to be. It has to be incredibly reliable, so you can put it on, you can stretch it, you can put it in a basket, etc. Like it's not going to break. It's got to be comfortable. That's also something that sounds obvious, but it's not always the case. And it's got to be cheap, right? So when you work with brands, I'll explain that in a minute, but when you work with brands, brands, they manufacture stuff in Asia for really low. So if you come with a bomb that's over $100, as some of the players out there have, like it's a non-starter. Like listen, your cool geek product, maybe you're going to sell a few thousand, but come back and talk to us when you actually have a bomb that's incremental versus what I'm paying right now for a t-shirt. Because I can't justify that. I mean, just the retail chain, with the markups that every distributor has, just will kill the product before it gets to market. So that's one of the things that we really had to learn. And we spent a lot of time working on bombs, bill of materials, right? Managing a collection, that was a great idea. We actually wanted to prove that we could do more than one shirt. Again, it's important to us to prove that we can adapt the technology into different models. We didn't expect the amount of work to do inventory, quality control. We thought that, hey, the shirt is a shirt, you add sleeve, it's all good. Well, not at all. So, different pattern, different QA process, etc. Working with consumer brand, that actually was a great learning. As many of you know, we had a fairly successful partnership with Ralph Lauren where we launched at the US Open, the ball boys and a pro were wearing the shirt during the US Open. Made a lot of noise. I hope you heard about it, but if not, hey, now you know. And listen, we were a bit hesitant because obviously a lot of startups don't want to work with the incumbents, like we're going to kill you, we're going to displace you. And a lot of them don't have the resource necessarily or the experience to deal with large company like that. I have a bit of gray hair, so I've been there before, so I wasn't necessarily afraid. But it's actually been a tremendous learning opportunity for us. I mean, when you think about consumer brands in the textile space, one thing they do is that they actually listen to the consumers and they actually, you don't think of them as innovator. It's maybe not even Ralph Lauren, but the fact is that they change all the time to stay incredibly relevant. And Ralph Lauren is the 4th largest luxury brand in the world. And so we learn a lot, and working together is actually going to make our next product so much better to actually reach people, like not only a tech elite, which, obviously I'm part of it, so nothing against it, but we want this to be out there. We want to actually have people wearing these shirts. Managing your supply chain, I mean, you're a hardware meetup, so you know all about this. But as hard as it's always hard to manage the hardware, we were working with Flextronic, which is, a very credible contract manufacturer, so that was a bit easier. But on the textile front, and even the textile and hardware front was incredibly hard. So if you think about, managing an ecosystem of like developing a product, like you have a thread and you have 2 needles and you try to put the thread between the 2 needles, to make it work, you just align the 2 needles and then you push the thread. Well, imagine if you have 15 needles, right? And you have to put the thread through 15 needles. They have to be perfectly aligned. And the construction was originally that complex that it had to be perfectly aligned, otherwise you had a problem of QA or signal or comfort or whatever. And that taught us a lot, obviously. Obviously, first we need to simplify the construction. That was easy. But even like just working with the QA process of the manufacturers, they had never seen a textile product that required so much QA. They weren't set up for it. I mean, they were changing thread, to do a stitch, and it was affecting the whole shirt. It was crazy, because people will send you a black thread, and it has the same product number, but they use a different dye, and it's not the same thread. But nobody knows it until you have a problem, and then you chemically test the thread, right? So it was actually extremely hard to actually manage the QA on this, and obviously good learning for us, and things we're going to actually simplify the next time around. And the last one, I'm going fast, I'm sorry. The last one is that the need to iterate quickly. When we started this 3 years ago, we looked at the technology space. We thought that, we picked what we thought at the time was the best thing. We developed, obviously, at the speed of a small startup with little funding. So it took some time. And now I'm looking at this, and I'm seeing that the whole market is still evolving. And so, and lots of progress. So it's easy to say that as a startup, you need to iterate quickly. Obviously, we all know that. But it's hard when you're working with hardware, which has normally a maturation cycle of about 6 to 9 months, right? And then you're also doing textile, which has its own, supply chain process and maturation process. And here's the thing. When you do a shirt, that's very specific, you need to do a hardware that's very specific. So I could come up with 3 models of shirts right now. In fact, I have way more in the pipeline. But I don't have the hardware yet for it, because I need to modify the basic hardware that I have to actually make these, consumer tech products. So it's another range of challenge to actually have 2 basically hardware supply chain that needs to be developed in collaboration. And sometimes, by the way, you don't know the problems you have until you have the 2 pieces together. So you can plan them perfectly independently, but it's only when you actually see them together that you realize, oops, we need to change this. So that was it.
Awesome, thank you. Alright, so we have time for a grand total of 1 question.
Fair.
Hi, I'm Aaron Franco, CTO of QuickSlot. You had a slide that said that you see smart fibers or technically enabled fibers by 2016. I'm wondering what your vision is of what that fiber is capable of doing.
No, actually, I think generation 2 was starting 2016. I'm talking prototypes early. The best elements of fibers that we've seen right now that are still very, prototypal are batteries, early transistors, things like this. I think the first generation are going to come is going to be like printed, and that's more like additive. So what you're going to see in the market is not necessarily what I was mentioning here. That's more like things are actually coming up and being tested. I don't think we're going to see smart fiber shirt in the market in 2016. But it's a good comment.
Thank you so much for this. This is terrific.
Thank you.